So welcome to this chapel chat. It has been sponsored by the Black Student Union, who desires not only to focus on, as it will tonight at 6:30, some of the tragedies that have occurred with regard to law enforcement, but to look at all sides, especially the law enforcement side. And I commend them for their wanting to fill this out so that all of us who, as the title of our chapel chats, everyone has a story. And if we don't know each other's stories, it's almost impossible for us to know each other and to know what each other is going through and how we feel, how we see things. And so this afternoon at this chapel chat, we'll hear from several representatives of the law enforcement community, and I want to welcome them. As you all come up, if you would introduce yourselves, but I'll let you hear their names. Captain Scott Moore, Sergeant P.J. Hardy, Chief Hambrick, our own campus security chief, Chief Thornhill, and then Chief Hambrick from the Mount Juliet Police Department. Also speaking will be one of our own professors, Dr. Odom. I want to begin with something written by one of my students. In my Bible as literature class, we study different literary forms in the Bible, and one of those is the lament psalm. And I invite students to write their own lament psalm. I invite them to trust me with their truth, with something in their lives that has been traumatic, a wound, and I tell them that unless they give me permission, it'll remain confidential. Students take me up on the offer, and this semester I received a lament psalm like none other that I've ever received. And I've received lament psalms from African American males who have spoken of the trauma of being stopped driving while black and what that's done to them in terms of the trauma that they continue to deal with. This lament psalm is written by Alicia Johnson, whose father served as a police officer under Chief Hambrick. She gives it the title, "Where is the Mercy for the Boys in Blue?" Growing up the daughter of a police officer, no one understands what you go through every day except those that have grown up the same way. They brush it off. They won't listen to you. "Okay, Alicia," is what I got when I tried to explain my viewpoint on not risking confrontation over a controversial topic with someone. They who I trusted shut me out. This is something that has been on my heart as long as I can remember, and I couldn't tell anyone outside of the circle. In kindergarten and first grade, having a police officer as a dad was the coolest thing ever. Every kid wanted to be one. He came to my class to give a presentation on the job, giving out police badge stickers and showing off the car to us, and everyone loved it then. As I got older, unbeknownst to me, the public's opinion of police officers began to change. The protectors of others all of a sudden became the enemy. I remember getting the talk from my parents that I do not by any means need to tell anyone what my dad does for a living. As a little kid, I asked why. I didn't understand. I was scared. My parents told me that there are evil people in this world who do evil things, and when they get caught, it's not their fault, it's the officers. And they want to and will seek revenge. So if people found out and they were part of the group who despised the police, I could be targeted because they have no mercy. My whole family could be targeted. I could be threatened, kidnapped, or killed just for the fact of my dad's job. He was an officer for 13 years. He enjoyed it immensely and only had to give it up due to injury risk. He loves helping people and talks about how much he misses it. But for a majority of those 13 years, I had to hide his job from others. I didn't lie, but I never openly said anything. We also were at risk of our house getting vandalized because of cruel people or idiotic teenagers trying to push their luck because my dad's patrol car was sitting in the driveway. Our house was egged several times, and so was the patrol car. It got to the point where every Halloween my dad would park the car behind our locked fence so it could not be seen or vandalized. My dad would also keep pepper spray and a baton by the front door in case someone came to confront him. He would watch the door like a hawk to make sure no one did anything suspicious on Halloween nights as trick-or-treaters passed through. I had times of paranoia at school because lots of people knew who my dad was. And I was scared that one day something would happen to me because of a classmate's parent or someone they knew not agreeing with the police. That paranoia and risk did not just come from those who knew who he was. It also came from the danger of the job. Every day when he walked out that door, we didn't know if he would be coming back that night. Then things started lightening up a little, and the police officers became the good guys again, until recently. 2020 has not been good for the boys in blue. They have been attacked, abused verbally and physically, threatened, and even killed. One white police officer kills a black man, and all of a sudden all police officers in existence, no matter who they are evil and racist. All the news reports is white officers killing black people. They don't report any other details about the stories. Police don't just shoot people. They never have. There had to have been a perceived threat for the officer to even pull their gun out of the holster. They are not going to fire unless a weapon is visible to be used against them. No one talks about the black officers killed just because they are on the police force. No one talks about the trauma and heartache that police officers are going through right now. They are having to show up to work in full riot gear. They are being told that they are getting defunded, that they are not needed. Just wait until these people are having to protect themselves from armed robbers or school shooters or anyone looking to do harm to them and those around them. How nice it will be then to have protection, to have a police officer trained to take down those who are armed. But people don't care. They see one thing, hear one story, and their mind is set. When did the protectors of all become the enemies? Why, God, are the officers being treated so terribly? Why are people pulling triggers on those who are innocent and are only trying to protect others? Where is the mercy for the boys in blue? Where is the help and the break from the constant abuse and slander to their names? They are being spit upon, attacked, threatened, and provoked. Where are the good people in this world who see the value in the job title of a police officer? Why do we, as police family, have to hide ourselves from the world because of this? When will the suffering for police end? They remain silent because whenever they try to speak and state how they only want to help people, they are laughed at and treated like scum. When will those whose mouths spit venom and actions draw blood against police officers be punished for their actions? When will karma rain her ugly head on those who believe they are invincible and don't need to be protected? Matthew 5:9 states, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." Where is that now? Where is the relief for the peacemaker children? Where is the revelation of those who tarnish the police officer title with their evil actions. But also, where is that old saying, to not let one bad apple ruin the bunch? Why does that not apply here? Where is the relief for the families of officers? Where is the break from the constant worry and agony that something will happen, that a riot will result in another loss? The officers need you, God. They need your patience. They need your mercy. They are tired. They are worn out. They are mentally exhausted and are holding in all their angry, sorrow, frustration, and tears. The light they shine in the world has been dimmed. They need encouragement. They need a spark from you, God, to light a fire in their eyes, to see why they chose this role in the first place. I ache in my heart as I did before my dad resigned. My best friend's dad is an officer. I have another friend with an officer father. I know a lady with 2 young children who worries every time her husband leaves the house. I remember the days of worry on my mom's face every single time my dad left for work. I remember going through it with her, especially through the most stressful times and tension in the public's opinion of police. Where are you, God? Where are you in the lives of these officers, those who risk their lives on a daily to care for your children? When will this madness end? I feel tears well up in my eyes, God. I feel worry, the anguish, the stress I once did years ago. That feeling, that trauma has never ceased. I will always remember it. But as I have in the past and continue to, I trust you, God. I trust that you will put an end to this and that you will restore the light and love in people's hearts. The peacemakers will once again be praised. The riot gear will be put away. The constant paranoia, looking over their shoulders at every turn, will give rise to confidence and joy in their daily commutes and lives. I believe in you, God, to put smiles on their faces as they walk out the door. I believe that you will give a day where the young children of officers will not have to grow up in fear for their family's safety because their mother or father is a police officer. I pray, God, that one day in the near future, everything will be put to rest as it seems it is starting to, where the public is not tarnishing the title of an officer with spitting and punching, but rather with a handshake and an expression of thanks. I know your power, God. I know your mercy. I know that things will always work out, no matter how bleak they seem. I know that you will put rest into the minds of police officers, that you will remove their worries and fears, that they will see a day like they saw years ago, a day when the public celebrates them. They deserve it, God. I know you are there, and I know that with you, the future is bright. The peacemakers will be blessed, and the boys in blue will finally be given mercy. Another side to a situation that has many sides, and we don't always hear from all the sides because sometimes the sides are so full of pain, full of emotion. Alicia described hers. People of color, their voices need to be heard as they describe theirs. And those of you who do the work you do, we need to hear from you. And so I invite you to respond to what Alicia has written, if you so choose, or how you respond to what's been going on the last several months now with regard to race relations and justice and the role of law enforcement people. And again, I remind you, if you would, introduce yourself so people will know who you are.
Good afternoon. I'm Captain Scott Moore with the Wilson County Sheriff's Office. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for over 21 years now, and absolutely love my job. Gets tough a lot of times, but don't regret working one day with the Sheriff's Office, going out in the community and serving, and that's what my passion is. But it's a very interesting story that was just read, and I know me personally, when I was growing up as a kid, my mother and father divorced when I was 4 years old. So my father had moved to Knoxville. I stayed with my mother. She was having to work at 2 or 3 jobs at a time to make ends meet. And it kind of caused me for me and my sister to be by ourselves. So a lot of times we was raised at my grandparents' house. But the reason I bring that up is one of the things that you're seeing in society today is the lack of a positive male role model in young children's lives as they grow up. I think whether you're female or male, I think it's very crucial to have that positive male role model in their life. And so I went for a period there where I didn't have that. And then my mom remarried to my stepfather, and he was a police officer. He served 27 years he retired as a lieutenant in the Highway Patrol, and then he went on to become the U.S. Marshal in Nashville from 92 to 2000. So being around him at a young age, that was kind of I was like, this is kind of cool, being a police officer. And I mean, who didn't, as a young kid, want to be a state trooper? Actually, when I got out of college, I graduated from the University of Tennessee in '99. And I put into the Highway Patrol because that was going to kind of be my dream job. That's what I wanted to do. Took the test, scored in the top 3. Then I get a call saying that they didn't have enough in the budget to put on an academy that year. So at that point, I put in at several other departments, and Wilson County Sheriff's Office was the first agency to call me back. And I ended up, getting on with them and been on with them 21 years. I can relate to that story because while I was growing up, my stepfather, we received many threats, especially when he became U.S. Marshal, and to the point to where we had cameras all around our house. We had them at the front entrance of our driveway, and we had 2 people that were consistently threatening his life as well as ours. And so I grew up living in fear of what could happen while we're asleep or while I was there alone and my parents were away and things like that. So, and when I became a police officer, I had a guy to walk in my front yard about 2 in the morning, and the reason I didn't know, I was asleep and I didn't know anything about it till my neighbor told me about it, but had a guy walk up when I lived in Mount Jit in my yard and was yelling, he was cussing, he was saying that he was the devil and he was going to introduce me to the throne, and he was threatening my life, my wife's life, my kid's life, and the whole reason, and I didn't know the guy. The reason why he'd done those things is because every day when he passed by my house, he saw the patrol car in my driveway, and he did not like police. And so he'd done that over a period of time, and finally it got to the point to where it was getting ugly. And Mount Jit Police at the time came over, and one of the officers went over there and talked to him, and I guess kind of settled him down a little bit. But I've ran across and also been with those instances where as a child growing up in fear because I didn't know if my stepfather was coming home. I know he was receiving threats. And then when I became a police officer, the same thing started happening to me. But, to get into the things that you're seeing in the country today, I'm a public information officer. And so I constantly, daily, talk with our local media, talk with the media station, the news stations in Nashville. And we've got a great rapport with them. And we're always... we always want to remain transparent with them, whatever happens, within our jurisdiction. But when something happens across the country, realize that there are police officers out there that deliberately do bad things. Now, they may not wake up that morning thinking I'm going to do something bad, but whether it's in the heat of the moment or whatever it is, there are corrupt police officers out there. But let me tell you this, it's a very, very, very small percentage. And so what the media does, if something happens, they'll portray it as, to where I do feel like that it makes law enforcement as a whole bad people, or that we're going out every time on a call and we're looking for something. And it's not that way. There's a lot of police officers out there across the country doing great things, and a lot of times you don't see that portrayed by the media. And when something like that happens, that's happened over this past year, with some of the police brutalities and stuff like that. For one, I wasn't there, so I'm not going to judge, and I've never done that, even with any officer. If I'm not there and I don't see anything, I'm not going to go by what I hear or see or anything like that. But there is a problem, I think, as a whole in society. I will tell you from my standpoint, when I wake up every morning and I put my uniform on and I put my gun on, I put my badge on, I'm going to honor that badge, because that, I was sworn to protect and serve, and that's what I'm going to do. And I don't care what color of race I'm dealing with, you're going to get the most respect out of me, because I respect everybody's opinion. Now, we may not agree on everything, but I'm going to respect your opinion because you're entitled to your opinion. And but I'm very blessed to be in a position I'm in, have the great opportunity to work with these fine professionals right here. We've been on a lot of panels and discussions together, and so I appreciate them as well. And you're going to get the same thing from them too. But it is an honor to be here today. I appreciate Chief Thornhill for inviting us and y'all allowing us in, and glad to be here. Thank you.
So as one local judge describes me, I am the fun-sized version of this man. My name is Sergeant P.J. Hardy with the Lebanon Police Department. I also am a public information officer, your public information officer for the city of Lebanon. So I hope that in saying that, I can represent our departments, the men and women that work for us, in our thought process and in the way that we operate. So I want to preface everything by saying I may come from a little bit different perspective. It's kind of ironic that I'm sitting between Scott and Chief Hambrick, because for those of you who may or may not know me, I wasn't born in this country. I was born in Saigon, Vietnam, now Ho Chi Minh City. My father was a mixed, mostly African American, but mixed American. Met my mother, who was Vietnamese, had me. I spent my first 5 years there until they finally told him he served too much time, 8 tours, and kicked us out and sent us back home to the United States. So my background is a little diverse, if you will. I grew up in the Chicago suburbs. I grew up on the south side of Chicago for the first 2 years of my life, moved out into the suburbs. So I've kind of seen the gamut. I have family members that look like each and every one of you in this room, honestly. So it is a little bit of a unique perspective. I was trying to think about what I wanted to say when I came up here, and of course, I want to make sure that I bring something that is useful. One of the terms that I think I struggle with the most in this whole current situation is the term systematic racism. The reason why I have such a problem with that is because I got a simple mind, so I break things down. So systematic, system meaning there's a mechanism, there's a training, there's a, follow these exact orders, and it's system. It's the way you do things. And then matic means automatic. This happens, this is the response. This takes place, this is how you handle it. I can tell you in my 18 years of law enforcement, and again, me being an anomaly, probably these gentlemen probably started their careers when they were younger. I didn't start my law enforcement career until I was 31. So I'm 53 now, and what makes it a little bit unique is because I brought some different skill sets to the table when I started. And that whole, and let me bring it back to the systematic racism issue that I have. Doesn't matter what department I've been with. I've been with 3 departments in my career, longest one obviously being here. There's never been a manual that says, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this, and then this happens and that happens and that happens. Everywhere I've worked, there's been a manual that says, this is what we would like you to do. These are some of the parameters that you need to consider, okay? And this is definitely what you don't do. Most policies are written after people that made mistakes, right, guys? So when mistakes have been made and policies get created, and then you get to define what it is that you don't want to do. So, and with every department that I've worked at, there's been different little nuances here and there. The one thing I can't tell you, so that's the system part of it. So I struggle with the system part of it because there is no training in racism. There is no manual that says, listen, these people get this type of service. These people get this type of service. It doesn't exist, okay? The automatic part I have a problem with because it makes you kind of assume that if this happens, automatically this is the response. I can't tell you in 18 years the times where instant decisions have to be made and it wasn't this happens and this is the response. There is such a wide range. You know, we in law enforcement do enjoy one thing, and that's called officer discretion. We have the discretion to do our job based on the situation and the information and everything that's at hand. And so there is no automatic about it. There's no such thing as if this is presented, this is the response. Because we're trained professionals. And I truly believe that in my heart. Every one of our departments that's represented on this panel here, I know that I can speak for us for sure. We do 40 hours of in-service every year. We do an additional 40 to 60 to 80 hours of other training that is career development training. It's a constant learning process. And it's really, we are training every single day in our profession. And unfortunately, that term profession may or may not apply in today's world. It may to some just be a job, it may just be a paycheck, it may just, some might call it a career, but in my heart, I truly believe it's still a profession, okay? You still can get a degree, which then puts you in a position to further your life and retire in this world called law enforcement. Criminal justice degree, by the way, if you're not familiar with that degree. So it is a profession, okay? So the reason why I'm having so much problems with that terminology, systematic racism, is that we look at the situations that have taken place here recently in society. I can tell you, and I think that I can represent my entire department when I say this, there are things that we have seen that are deplorable. There are things that we have seen that should never have happened. There are things that, again, if you make it a systematic racism issue, that would mean those deplorable things that we see are systematic of every law enforcement agency in the land, and that's just not true. We look at some of the training techniques, different processes that they go through. And in some of these situations, in some of these instances, we look and we go, we stopped doing that 15 years ago. Why are they still using it? So if it is systematic, then why aren't we all doing the same thing? We're not. We're not. On the other hand, we look at some other situations where we see what we see, and we see it from the side of law enforcement, because that's who we are. And there are things, many, many things within our entire society and in our entire world where you only get a perspective of one or two and you don't get the full picture. There are situations that right now that are being, what's the word I want to use? They're lump summed into some other situations that are bad, but these particular situations, the whole story is not being told. And that creates this issue. And I understand. I get it. I get it to grow up having people look at you differently, trying to wonder what you are, whether you're a good person or a bad person based on your looks. But you got to remember too, I know someone mentioned it, we kind of get painted with this broad stroke of a brush. If 10%, whatever the number is, I think that's an absolute high number, but whatever the number is, a small percentage of law enforcement is bad, the rest of us are bad. Small percentage of young black males are bad, the rest are bad. Small percentage of certain eco-economical, social people are bad because they do this, then everybody is bad. And that's the problem that I have. Fortunately, I can say that that's an inner issue I have, because on the outside, I don't know how long you students have been in the area. I don't know how many of you are from the area, but I would like to think, and I hope that I'm correct, that we have a good relationship in our community with everyone in our community. We have representation within our department. Now, I'm going to be quite honest with you. There are certain sectors of our department that isn't as represented as it should be to reflect our community, but quite honestly, it's part and parcel of what's been going on here, in the last several years, that more and more women, people of ethnicity, less and less are getting involved in law enforcement because they, quite frankly, don't want to take those chances and take those risks. But we do have African Americans, we do have Native Americans, we do have me, Mutt. We have all sorts of people. And so I think we are represented, and I think that we do have a good relationship with our community. Recently, a month or two back, while the height of the protesting was going on, we had protesters here, and we welcomed them, and we gave them a safe space to be able to voice their thoughts and voice their angst and voice their hopes and dreams of what they want to see come in this world. And we provided that safe space for them, and I think it's been wonderful. Fortunately, we've not had some of the issues that other major cities have had. And so I think, again, so if you look at it from that standpoint, that's where I struggle with this whole systematic racism thing, because there's no automatic about it. It's not part of our culture. It's not in our fabric, whether your fabric is tan or navy like Chief and I, okay? It doesn't matter. Our fabric is not made all of the same. And, I would ask that you look at the bigger picture and absolutely do everything that you can to correct those things that are ill-willed within our society. But at the same time, work with us. If there's things that we're, doing that you'd like to see different, please let us know and let us work together to change those things, and just keep it. There's a difference between the local base and the national base, and I totally get that. So, again, I don't know if that helps, but again, that's one of those things that I do struggle with. And I'll finish with this: the whole growing up as a child or a family member of law enforcement. it is a little bit unique. From the time my kids were old enough to talk, it's pretty much been embedded in them two things: consequences, okay, and this whole thought process that, well, your dad is a police officer, so that changes everything. And I usually preface it by saying, sorry, but you can't do that because of who I am. Sorry, that's not something that we can take a risk on because of who I am. And it's constant. I'm proud to say I have a daughter that goes right here, and if you'll ask her, she'll just roll her eyes and go, yeah, you know. And she'll tell you, yeah, my dad always tells me, you know, your dad's not a plumber or a preacher or a politician. So politicians probably fall about, anyway, not in those three categories. I'm a police officer. So everything that happens in our life, in our world, with them, everything they do reflects on me and my ability to have a credible presence in the community as a police officer. So there is a difference. I hope to God that my kids were never fearful, because I would hate to think that they live in fear for what I do. But they do understand that there is a little bit of a difference, and that there is kind of in some cases, they feel a higher standard for them versus maybe their friends and their peers. And so, you know, I get what the young lady was saying in that lament, and I appreciate that. But anyway, we're always here, you know. It's 24/7. It's kind of what we do. Reach out to us if you ever have any questions or concerns or whatnot. I would love to be able to, you know, take on any questions or issues that may come up, and just know that whatever the situation is, wrong is wrong and right is right. And when there's wrong, we will stand with you, and we will do everything within our powers as well to correct that wrong. As long as you give us the respect and the courtesy to say, hey, okay, that's over there. Let's over here, you know, we're doing good. And if we're not doing good, absolutely call us out on it. So let's keep the perspective the way it is. That whole systematic racism thing is troubling to me. So I hope that helps out a little bit. That's my time. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Chief James Hambrick from the Mount Juliet Police Department. Thanks, Doc. Thanks for the lament. Thanks for the invitation to come and to share today. And I got about 12 hours, so I'm gonna just get it all in here. Because we would need time for me to say and deal with everything that I feel should be dealt with, and that we could deal with today. But like PJ has said, he said he came in law enforcement at a later time. Well, I was in my mid-30s when I got into law enforcement, and been in Mount Juliet, and this is the only agency I've worked for. I've been there 25 years. December would be chief for 8 years. And so what I'm about is relationships. I'm also a pastor. I've been in ministry a lot longer than policing, and also a clinical therapist. So what we do is about relationships, and I say that is in my ministry. My motto is keeping it real. I love to keep things real. Is there a racism problem? Absolutely. Why is it a problem? Because sin is a problem, and unfortunately, we're going to have it until the Lord comes back. That's not to say we don't do anything about it, or try to do anything about it, or try to move the needle forward. But how is it going to be done? I've been asked since all of this, these current events have happened, about, hey, let's get with the governor and let's do this march and let's do this conference and let's do this. And I said, whoa, we don't need another big conference. We don't need another big thing. What we need to do, the needle is going to be moved forward with this problem, this issue of the conflict when we deal one-on-one relationships with others and hearing one another out and having meaningful conversations with each other that are not like ourselves. Meaning when we have conversations with people that are not like us and sit down and talk things, and this is the main thing, when we listen and hear one another out, that's where the change is going to start happening in our society. It's here, and when we talk about the law enforcement component of it, and being a black male, we do know that Dr. had already said about instances about driving while black and things that happen. First thing, we can't be in denial that things happen. Hey, things happen, man. I'm just being real. Things happen. And this is not before I was in law enforcement. This is since I've been in law enforcement. I've been pulled over, didn't do anything wrong, didn't break any laws. One was lied and said I did something. So I do know that it exists. I said, the officer said, the reason I stopped you? I said, no, you went straight through that stop sign. I said, straight through? I said, I turned left. I didn't tell him. I knew I turned left. Matter of fact, I stopped and waved another vehicle through. And but I had a souped up Cutlass, 70-something Cutlass at the time. I had my hat on backwards. I had my shades on, and they said, I was wondering. I said, I wonder what they have, and whoa, they got me. All right. And so when the officer came up, you have a license and everything? Sure. And I'm pulling it out. He said, hold up, what's that? I said, what's what? What's that? And he was looking at the badge. I said, this? He said, oh, I'm sorry. And I told him, I said, look here. In the neighborhood I lived in, I want the neighborhood cleaned up. But let's do it the right way. Let's do it the right way. So first of all, we know that these type of things happen. How do we create an environment to where they're happening less and less? And that comes through, again, relationships. And again, hearing one another. But it comes from understanding your source of information. How do you get your information? And how do you pour that information? And how much credence do you give the information that you're getting? Do you qualify the information, first of all, that is being given out? Or do you just take it, hey, as gospel? And that happens far too much, that people hear something and the first thing, and they just take it as gospel, and then they're sharing it, and they're going, and it could be an absolute lie, and they have spread it on. Perception is something, and one of the perceptions now is that, hey, all law enforcement is bad. Law enforcement, I just saw the other day that the law enforcement system is racist. And I'm like, man, these people have no clue. When we talk about the instances of current events that have happened where black males, females have been killed by law enforcement, if it hadn't happened, but if, just giving you, I know Doc says she's going to give some information on some stats and statistics, but if the media has showed, if they've shown 100 instances of police brutality and or a police shooting of a person of color, if they showed 100, now we don't have that, but I'm just saying if they did, that would still be less than 1%, of the law enforcement community. And that's the picture, as Captain has said earlier, that's the picture that's not being conveyed. That's the message that is not being conveyed. The good work that is being done in law enforcement every single day. You're not hearing about people that are homeless and people that are hurting, people that are helpless, and the law enforcement going in and buying them food, putting them up in hotels, giving them a good meal, giving them and doing for them that they can't do for themselves at that time. Those things are not being put out, but they're happening every single day in the law enforcement community, and not just by a white officer to a white person. I mean, it spans across racial issues. But we have a problem, and it starts with relationships. I'm glad that not only in Mount Juliet, but Lebanon, the county, we've all have been intentional. We use that word intentional in trying to bridge the gap and build formidable relationships within our community, and we're committed to that. We're absolutely committed to that. We're open to sit down with our community and really address the issues, not because conflict, sometimes people have conflict avoidance. They want to avoid conflict. I invite the conflict because until we deal with it, until we sit down and communicate and talk about it, it would still be happening, and we won't address it as we need to. So we don't run away from it. My office, I'm there, and my door is open, and we invite people to come in. If you have an issue, come in and let's deal with it. But at the same time, and I'm talking to our black people that right now, at the same time, we cannot, I know they got this thing about reparations and things like that. Had something just happen in Mount Juliet recently, to where a guy was driving a vehicle not with expired tags. He didn't have any tags. And I received a call from his mother, and then he wanted to complain on the officer for stopping him. No tags at all. And guess what? The officer did not give him a citation. Told him that, sir, you need to go get your tags. The tag office is open now. You know, through all this COVID thing, but it's open now. You need to go get your tags. And this was the response. My officer told me, I'm just going to give you a break. Just go and have a nice day. And the response was, you have a nice effing day, from the individual. He wants to call and complain to me. I said, I don't think so. We have to get, that's a part of being entitled, but that's a mindset that is happening now. That, man, because I'm black, you can't stop me. And this is the officer was white, and so there was a mindset, and there is a mindset that's permeating around this whole country, that if I'm black, you can't stop me. No, wrong. We got to deal with that too, because that can't be, we can't let that go either. And so it has to be a balance. There has to be a balance. And the balance starts with us respecting one another. Respecting one another. And I mean, the law enforcement profession, not just because I'm in it, it's a noble and it's an honorable profession. That's why I chose, when I was approached to become in it, because I didn't as a boy, growing up in the projects in Nashville, police wasn't my thing, you know what I'm saying? I didn't have that father in law enforcement or somebody in law enforcement that I really looked up to. I told Chief Anderson at a meeting of major city chiefs all around this country, told them, I said, sound to me like all of your giving your introductions that you wanted to be law enforcement all your life. I said, that's not my testimony. I used to run from Chief Anderson, I'll tell you that. but that's just the way things are. But respect is where it comes to. Respect and hearing one another out, and understanding that we don't run away from the issue, we don't try to dodge the issue, we don't try to hide from the issue. Racism is a problem, but it will continue to be a problem until we deal with it the right way. And again, I'm blessed, I'll just say that again, I'm blessed to be in Mount Juliet, blessed to be in Wilson County, and we have some great agencies here that I not only hear about, but I see constantly trying to do the right thing and trying to make a difference in the lives of others. Is there work to do? Absolutely. We can't stop. Always work to do, but we are committed to just building the relationships with our community, hearing our community out. But understand that let's take George Floyd, for instance. The George Floyd incident was just as appalling to law enforcement as it was to the other community, the rest of the community. We didn't like it no more than anybody else liked it. Why? Because that's not the way we train. Simple as that. It's not the way we train. George Floyd incident was not a problem because George Floyd was black. The tactics used was wrong, period, in spite of the race of the individual. He happened to be black. And so when we look at things for real and call them out, I don't know any law enforcement that I've met that thought that that was okay. But when you receive from the media, when the media puts their spin on it, it's like all law enforcement is accepting of that behavior. And that's not, it's accountability. And I'm gonna end with this because just to give you, to some of you, maybe you don't know us. And so just to I just like getting personal. Just like getting personal. And accountability is key with me. These gentlemen, not just with me, but with all of our agencies. You want to talk to my son, and I've shared with everybody, you want to talk to my son, you go to the prison in Hartsville because that's where he is. You know who put him there? We did. Why? Because of accountability. If you come in and you do dirt, that's what happens. Regardless if you're my son, your son, it doesn't matter. So we got to address the issue, not just racism issue, we got to address the issues that are creating instances to where people are having negative encounters with law enforcement in the first place. And I know I was at a talk in Nashville and they didn't like it. I had somebody say, well, you got to change your talk. I'm like, no, I'm not changing my talk. I'm keeping it real. We got to deal with those root causes as well. And if we want to really change, again, it's real. Doc may give out this statistic. It's real that because I had someone tell me this, and I'm gonna sit down. Somebody told me that, well, there are more whites being killed than blacks, and the media doesn't talk about it. And I said, absolutely right. From a numbers perspective, more white individuals are killed by law enforcement than black, from a numbers perspective. From a percentage perspective, that's what a lot of people have been talking about, the percentage. And given the same type of situations, then black males have been 2.5 times the number killed in that same type of scenario or same type of environment. And that's what we have to deal with. And so, again, we're committed to you. We're committed to you. We don't run away and try to hide from issues. We work with these issues and deal with them effectively. And we're all big. All three agencies here. I say four because Chief Thornhill is the agency here. He knows. He does a thing that brings us together as well. All of us are committed to building and forming better relationships within our communities and to make a difference in this world. So I thank you for the time, and hey, God bless you. Forever keep you.
You know, if I wasn't so much better looking at Chief Hambrick, he'd remind me of me. And I tell you what, I don't have experiences like these gentlemen do, but the thing is, just like Cumberland, it's our own little town. It's our own little city. When I came here, 2002, the streets surrounding Cumberland, mile long, that was our campus. Now we cover 11 miles. And so, and I take pride in that. But the thing is, I'm gonna also talk to you, if I can, as a human being, because like I said, I don't have experiences like they do. But the thing is, we need to get back to talking to human beings as human beings. Talk to people, not at people. And that's what I try to do here on our campus. And as far as I know, myself and our department has good relations on our campus with our kids. But, you know, the thing is, we're all God's people. You know, we all bleed red. And we just, what really shook me up recently was people tell me every day, and I never used to hear this, is people always tell me on the campus, Chief, be safe, we love you. And I used to never hear that. I could go in the store, somebody I don't know, they say, be safe. This is the kind of environment we've got into now. And, you know, I think to myself, why would anybody want to hurt me? I'm just trying to do good. But there's people out there, you know, like these gentlemen right here, including myself, we'd all give our lives for y'all in a heartbeat. And so it's unreal, because every day me or my officers can go down the street and somebody yells something foul out of their windows, and all we're trying to do is protect the campus. You know, I've been called a rent-a-cop, and I tell them a rent-a-cop's what you see behind an NES truck, you know. And but no, we're here just to protect y'all and do a service. Yeah, this is our small town. They've got their own towns, but you know, these are bad times we're living in. We got to learn to talk to each other instead of at each other. When I'm talking to any of the students, faculty, staff, whatever, I want to know the person I'm talking to. You know, I'm talking to that individual. I want to get deep down with them, and you know, that way they can know me too. You know, I don't believe in talking at people, but I just think we need to get back to the basics. We're all God's children, and we need to learn to love and appreciate each other. But like I said, I'm not going to talk long. These guys are long-winded. I'm not. I just tell it how it is. But thank y'all for your time.
As Dr. Odom's coming up, I want you all to know that Chief Thornhill's mother's funeral is tomorrow, and I want him to know that the Cumberland community cares about you and loves you. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to first take this mask off. Okay, y'all wear glasses and you wear the, and I got contacts, but they're not back yet, and it's, anyway. So I take my mask off. But let me say this before I start. I do not, under any circumstance, agree with defunding the police, okay? I've spoken at many rallies, many Black Lives Matters rallies, and I say that. The reason is because that they serve and protect. Now, there are bad police officers, just like they're bad professors, just like they're bad, you know, black people, right? What if, well, not what if, let's talk about it. So when people find out, especially, you know, my white people, when they find out, you know, they'll say, ask me what I do, and I'll say, oh, well, I'm a professor. What? Wow. And I'm like, why is it so wow? You know? Well, you don't look like a professor, right? So that goes, and that's a whole nother story, but that goes with the whole microaggressions, things that Dr. Parker talks about. But, you know, we have to categorize what's happening with police officers and with some of the brutality that's happening. Do I agree that with every black man or black girl who is shot and killed, do I agree that they should be shot and killed? No. But I also don't agree with a lot of them that shouldn't be. We have to put ourselves, now like I said, you all know I'm Angela Davis type 2, right? But you gotta be truthful with yourself. When you are put in a situation, some of you all got boyfriends and girlfriends and y'all getting arguments, and I mean, honestly, I see some of y'all, I'm like, I'm glad I don't see no gun or something over there. I mean, honestly, you get angry, you just don't know what's gonna happen, right? So I wanna say that I don't agree with a lot of them, but I do agree with some, right? Now, there are reasons why we do certain things, especially African Americans, Hispanic Americans, when we are approached by the police officers. I'm gonna talk about that. It has a lot to do with the brain, right? But I wanna say that I've had bad experiences with a police officer, basically because I like fast cars. I like anything fast, right? And so I have a nice sports car, and I was pulled over, right? But I didn't go off on the police officer. I did exactly what he told me to do. Yes, sir, thank you, right? He gave me a warning for whatever it was, right? I went home, I got on my computer, and I typed up a long letter. I put statutes in it, all of that. Sent it in to the chief in Nashville. I think it was at the North Precinct. 2 days later, I got a call back, and they asked me to come in. I went in, and there stood the chief, the police officer, and some other guy. And police officer gave me a formal apology for that, right? I did the right thing, though. I didn't tell him have a good effing day, right? There's a way we can do things to get our point across, right? So anyway, I digress. But let's talk about some of the numbers. I'm glad that Chief Hambrick talked about the percentage of black men, black people getting killed by police officers versus white people. And so I want to preface this by saying that these are statistics, okay? And statistics sometimes, depending on the research, can be the researcher. But I've researched this times before, and some of these numbers they come out as making sense. So there are about 1,000 civilian killings, or can I say killings? Is that a good word? What word should I say? Should I say killings by police officers? Is that okay? All right. I just want to make sure, because I don't want to. All right. So 1,000 killings by police officers a year. All right. We've had 994 this year, so it looks like we're going to hit that number even more. It's not all in Tennessee. This is nationwide. Okay. Of those civilians who are killed, black men are most accounted for, like Chief said, 2.5 times more than white men. So let's put this into perspective. There's a research done by the Washington Post between the years of 2015 and current, okay? So let's talk about these numbers. So there are approximately 42 million black people in the United States, and this is since 2015. Since 2015, 1,352 black people have been killed. That equals up to about 32 people per million of black people. Now, let's talk about the white people, okay? There are approximately 197 million white people in the United States. In the numbers, more of them have been killed than black people, 2,600. That's about 13 per million. So let that sink in a little bit. Yeah, numbers-wise, yeah, there are more white people being killed by police officers than there are black people. But when you look at the percentages, 32 per million, 13 per million. Hispanics, about 24 per million. 39 million Hispanics, 949 killed a year. So those are the statistics on that. So let's talk about the effects of it. Let's talk about the effects on the black community. And then we're going to talk about the mental health effects and then some effects on education, okay? Because that's what Alana asked me to talk about, the effects, okay? So approximately 65% of black households are single parents, right? 57% of those 65% run by who? Who you think run in the household? Who? Mom, right? Right? So what takes the fathers out of the household? It's twofold. You got the prison pipeline that I believe is real. And if you want to talk about that, we have a whole nother chat about it, right? It's real. But it's also because they're murdered. And let me say something. I'm going to try to put this as non-confrontational as possible. But our lives, black lives, cannot matter to the world until our lives matter to us, right? Black on black crime is real. It is so real, right? There have been times, I've taught at Whites Creek High School for years, and I used to tell them all the time, I'm a little thug, which I ain't, but I told them that because, hey, they wasn't going to, they still think I'm pretty bad, right? But I taught there, right? In North Nashville, in one particular year, I lost 24 different students or kids that I knew, went to 23 funerals 1 year. Did the police shoot one of those? Was all gang-related, black on black crime. Okay? So we have to talk about, we have to also talk to our own community about what are we doing to stop it. And if we defund the police, that number's gonna skyrocket, right? So anyway, so they're murdered. So what's this do to the household? Well, the children are more likely to drop out of school, exhibit behavioral problems, become a victim to the penal system, right? So that's going to juvenile, on the prison, unemployment, and then have some kind of substance or drug abuse. And this creates a cycle effect. So let's talk about that father who's not in the household, whether he's in prison or he's been murdered, right? If we're talking about police brutality, let's say he's been murdered by the police, but we also have crime of our own that we have to deal with, right? So that happens, that kid grows up looking at other men in the community to be the father, and sometimes it may not be a good role model. As Captain Scott Moore said, men are not there, right? So what happened is these kids are looking up to the people that they look at as being role models, and these people have dropped out of school. They have behavioral issues as adults. We know a lot of adults. I know some adults that got behavior issues, right? They've been in and out of prison. Mama's on unemployment. Her job is having kids. We can talk about that later as well, right? And, marijuana and mollies, is that right? Is that the right word? Is that stuff y'all, is it mollies? Well, I'm just saying, the generation, is that what, okay, right. So, right, they grow up, looks like that, y'all. They grow up looking at that in the household, right? So what happens is that kid thinks so you only understand what you stand under, and you only can stand under what you understand. That's the reason why a lot of kids cause issues in the classroom, right? So what happens, that child grows up, what do you think that child is gonna do if all they've seen is this? They're gonna do the same thing. And if it's a male, there's a strong probability that he's going to be in and out of the juvenile system by 21. He's either going to be dead or he's going to be in prison. So it's a cycle effect. So that's the first thing, is not having a father in the home, in the black household. I can talk about myself. I was buck wild when I was younger. And I still think I'm young, but not as young as I was, right? I could have had a reality show. My mom and them tell you that all the time. My mom would yell and scream and holler, and I just walk off, But my dad, only thing he had to say to me, only thing he has to say to me now is, Shonda, I'm so disappointed in you. Y'all, my world came to him like, oh my God, my dad's disappointed. Is that, you were shaking your head, right? Yeah. So fathers, it's just something about having the father in the household. When he's not there, things go awry, okay? So that's first thing, affects in the black community, that, we're basically losing our community. Let's talk about this mental health thing. I think this is what Alana wanted me to kind of touch on a lot. So in 2020, some psychologists got together, and they wanted to know if the anguish and pain black people were feeling, if it was just on surface or did it go deeper, okay? So, and it did. So let's talk about why. So it's ingrained in black people to think, and rightfully so, that our lives in general may not matter as much as other lives in the United States. So let's talk about this, all right? Let's talk about why. the tortures of slavery. We wasn't there, but we see the pictures. We've studied it in school. And college gives us a more, we can study it without having limitations on what that's the glory about being in being in a higher ed institution. I can't even imagine, man, I don't even know how the body goes through some of the stuff that went on during slavery, right? So first thing, you start learning about slavery at what age? But like middle, maybe like elementary, 3rd, 4th grade. So you start learning, a black little girl at the age of 8 or 9 looks at this picture of this woman who's maybe being hanged for something. Okay, let's keep talking, let's keep going. We're talking about lynchings in the 50s and the 60s and recently, right? Think about what that does to someone that's African American. You look like me and you're hanging from a tree. And it's 2019, right? Let's talk about the medical experiments. Tuskegee experiment, if you don't know about it, go look it up, right? Now we've got what I call the COVID experiment, right? We can't be guinea pigs, but that's what's happened in the past to African Americans, right? And then forced sterilizations on both male and females at a certain time in order to slow the progression of black people in the United States. Well, let's just make them sterile. So that's what happened. And now all of a sudden, this girl went through school, and she saw all of this in the books. She studied all about this, and then she sees a black man being killed on TV, a white police officer with his knee on the neck of this black man, and just looking like it's an average day, right? That affects us mentally, and it affects us to a point that we don't know that we're being affected. And then what happens is we go to these rallies, and we act up. Now, I agree with rallying. I've been there. I've done protests, but I do not agree with tearing up other people's stuff. I don't agree with blaming police officers who have not done anything, and then you're up in their faces yelling and screaming. I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm so glad the good Lord blessed me to be a teacher, and he knew what he was doing when he made me, because if I was a police officer and y'all coming at me yelling and screaming, when I say y'all, I mean the generation, not y'all, right? Coming to me yelling and screaming, talking about you, and I know I was at home last night. I wasn't even in, I was at home. We're gonna have some problems. My temper is 1 to 10 quick. So that's what makes us do the things that we do sometimes when we are in a pack. Think about a pack. Think about dogs, okay? Usually when dogs kill other dogs or kill other animals, they are in a pack. And they jump on this dog, and the dog may not have done anything to that dog, but he is gonna bully somebody. Think about gangs, right? We hear about them, well, the gang jumped somebody. Why does it take 5 people to fight one person? When I was young, one person fought one person, you got over it, right? But so when you get with a pack, you start having what this thing called groupthink. But your groupthink, you've also got your brain telling you that you're depressed, that you're mad, and you have not been treated for it. Right? Is it sinking in? Hope this is sinking in for you. Okay, so all of that's going on. It creates trauma, anxiety, a sense of hopelessness and fear about police encounters. So, and I'm gonna talk about how that affects young people and really black people when we have encounters with the police officers. Let's talk about the way health-wise it affects young adults, right? In a survey, Washington Post asked younger people, high schoolers, how they felt about their future, and they were very apprehensive. One kid was noted as saying, so I don't know if I'm gonna live. I'll make straight A's. I have a very high GPA. I'm probably going to an Ivy League school. I mean, if I get out and I'm a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, right? Police officer. I'm a good standing citizen. I can be shot just because I'm darker than the person who pulled me over. That's the way young people feel, right? Let's talk about adults. And you all are adults, okay? You still, because you're in education, you still may be kind of apprehensive about your future, but you all are young adults. So let's talk about how it affects you. It's called acute stress. And acute stress is something that amplifies when you have an encounter with whatever caused that stress, right? And then that in turn sometimes turns to anxiety. Okay? So let's talk about what causes this acute stress. And then we're going to talk about what it causes in our lives. So you have this thing in your head, it's called the amygdala. This is the professor coming out, probably, right? It's the amygdala. I promise you I won't get too deep. And the amygdala is this thing that can hijack every other sensory nerve in your brain, right? Everything. When it's calm, you learn, you can critically think, right? You can problem solve, you can talk reasonably, you can have conversations. The second that it clicks in, all that's gone. And God has made it to react in less than a second. So when you encounter something that causes that amygdala to react, right? Then all of a sudden you go into fight, flight, or freeze. So we always say, one of the guys that I taught about 4 or 5 years ago, he was running from the police officer, and the police officer shot him in the back. And a lot of people were like, wait, why are you running? Why did you run? As you run, they're going to shoot you. Why did you run? Problem solving went out the window. That's the reason why when cops pull some black men over, they go left real quickly. They go into, I need to protect myself, right? How do we get past that? We got to we need mental health help in the black and Hispanic community. I envy the white community because they have it and we don't, right? So especially during this time, I had a friend call me one morning, and she was just, she going off, right? She was crying and yelling. I was like, girl, calm down, what's going on? And she was using very colorful language, and she doesn't use that kind of language. Some of the things that she was saying, I was like, man, you keep on. I'm going to have to call Vanderbilt Psych Ward to come get you, because she was talking about she wanted to go get a gun, and she wanted to kill, and she was just ammunition. And I was like, what's going on? Well, she had just saw Breonna Taylor's fiance talking to Gayle King on an interview online. I mean, on Channel 5 or whatever. And it just made her, she clicked, right? Now I was able to talk her down off of the cliff, and she's fine today. But see, some people, let's say if she wasn't in her right mind, let's say that she had been dealing with depression, anxiety, and PTSD since she was 6 because she saw her father being killed by a police officer or something, right? And she hadn't dealt with that. Can you imagine what would have happened? Right? So when we don't deal with this acute stress, first of all, if we are already having mental health issues, it's going to quickly go left for us, right? The second thing is it causes health issues within our bodies, like obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes. Well, how in the world does police brutality cause that? Glad you asked. So, black people, white people, if y'all didn't know this, now you know, right? So black people, food is our comfort, right? Funeral, somebody die in the family, we're going to eat good for like at least a month, right? I mean, honestly. So that comes from slavery. And there are things that we do in the black race that comes down from generation to generation, and it's called a generational curse, and I'm pretty sure Pastor can talk about that. The Keith turns into Pastor to talk about that, but it's a lot of things that we do we don't even know that we do. One of those things is eat soul food. So during slavery, the slaves were not able to go in and sit down and eat the meal. They got the scraps. Sometimes they didn't even get that, right? So they had to make do with what was left over or what was outside already. That's where you think about it, turnip greens. Who in the world would think about making a doggone plant taste the way it tastes, especially my grandma's, right? Right? I don't eat them. My mama loves them, but them things them hog intestines, y'all know what? Right? Right? You eat them too?
I ate them by the pail growing up.
Oh. So, right? Who would have thought of eating the intestines and making it taste good, I guess, right? Who would take the bad part of a chicken that no one wanted, the dark meat part of the chicken, and making a leg out of it? And Publix, I will go eat Publix chicken leg all day long. What happens is this. That was our safety net during slavery. So when something happened that really touched our spirit, the first thing we had was church, and then we had food. That's it. So throughout generations, that's what we've done. If you think of every bad thing that's happened in your family, food has been around it, if you think about it. Right? And it's not good food. The thing about it, everything about this food is bad except for the taste. High cholesterol, high sodium. This thing is high in everything, right? I'm just saying, keep hamburger, right? We should not be eating this stuff, but the more salt, the better. Well, what happens is this: when we are depressed, how many of you all heard about was it COVID-15 or whatever, gain weight? Yeah? Yeah, right? That's what so as humans, we have to feed that. Well, some races feed it by eating vegan stuff. I don't know why, but they eat vegan, right? Some eat only vegetables, and some, all of that. So they're okay with that. But African Americans, we eat salty food, bad food, and it affects our health. So this year, 40% of the of the health issues that are going on, they kind of took a survey. 40% of black people going into the doctor had high blood pressure, and it was just from this year. Okay, so that's another way that it affects adults. And of course, older people, they're just desensitized to the brutality. My grandmother doesn't faze her. She walked with Dr. King. She's just like, that's just the way of the world, Shonda. And I'm like, okay, Grandma. Let's talk about the effects on education. So, statistics say that a black boy who has watched some kind of crime happen, police brutality, whether it's that or any kind of crime even black on black crime, they're 2.5% less likely to graduate from high school, 2% less likely to enroll in college, and then 15% or more is diagnosed with some kind of emotional disturbance. So in education, we know these as learning disabilities, PTSD, depression, ADD, right? So it's kind of like, I saw this at a young age, but I can't get it out of my system. You're also going to see more gun-related homicides in the community. They're desensitized to it, right? They see it everywhere else, so let me just get a gun and do it myself. So that's another way that it affects. And of course, when that happens, then students that come to school, well, they're experiencing a lot of mental issues as well, right? So, I hope this is giving you a good outlook on what it's doing to the black community, like how it's affecting us with just, like I said, police brutality, that's what we're talking about today, but just crime itself is how it affects us, right? And what I would say is that BSU or I forget the organization, and also the Afro, Try to do some things on mental health, because right now I think that's what's needed. We know the issue, right? We got to get our brains right in order to fix the issue. Because if I can't talk to somebody about what I'm feeling without cussing and yelling and screaming and then eventually causing some sort of violence, it's never going to work. So let me get myself together first. Then we can have a conversation, right? I respect police officers. I've never had any issue. Well, I did have that one issue, but, and I had a police officer tell my daddy I was speeding when I was like 16, but, you know, hey, whatever. But I respect you all. I do think there are bad apples. I do not agree with people holding you all responsible for those bad apples, because I've been held responsible for a lot of bad apples in the African American community. There are things I can't do right now because someone else, I can't go into a store right now because someone else went in that store and stole something. So when I go in the store, I'm followed around. So I know how that feels to be stereotyped, right? So I appreciate what you're doing. I don't want, if they do defund you, just know that I didn't say it because I need your protection. All right, so if I call you, if you can just come, it'd be great. Anyway, any questions about the statistics that I presented? If you want to know where I got them, please let me know and I will make sure I send it out to you, okay? Thank you.
Oh, wow. I feel like our cup runneth over and over and over. Elena Mack is president of the VSU. Is that correct? Your role? And our time has gone over again with good stuff, but I wanted to let you greet the gathering here and have anything that you'd like to say.
Hi, my name is Alana Mack. I am the president of the Black Student Union here on campus. And honestly, I cannot be more happy that you guys came, took time out of your days to come speak to us. I'm so grateful that you did. I wanted to touch bases on some things that you guys said and how it related to my life personally. I am not from here. I am not from Tennessee. I am from Charlotte, North Carolina. I grew up there. I was born and raised there. My family is from the South. I've never lived out of the South. My entire life I've been from the South. I had only had one positive experience with police my entire life before I got here. Police officers and/or security guards included. I have only had one, and that was my DARE officer in elementary school. When I first got here last year, I came from my visit for track and field. I came and I met Chief Thornhill. He told me that the Cumberland campus was a community, that we were a family. It was things I had heard at other schools, the regular spiel, but then he gave me a hug. He gave me his card and he gave me a hug. I still have his card in my wallet to this day. I have never been much of a hugger to strangers. I've never been that kind of person, but when he did hug me, it showed me like, this is different. This is not Charlotte. Lebanon is not Charlotte. Tennessee is not North Carolina. It's a whole nother experience for me. I am a criminal justice major now because of my past with police officers. I am a criminal justice major, and I do know that there are good and there are bad police officers, just like there are good and bad people. Because at the end of the day, we are all humans. There's like you said, there's sin in the world, so that's why we're here. And I just wanted to touch on the fact that while for me, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Spaced out. I did want to say something though. I grew up with both my parents in the household. Both my parents, we didn't have a lot. Both my parents have a degree. Both of them went to college at a HBCU. Both of them worked multiple jobs when I was younger. I didn't see my father really, he was in the household, of course. He was there, he was present. He has never missed anything for me. He's never missed a band, concert, a track meet, a chess match, none of that. He has never missed a day. But I didn't see him when I was growing up because he was always working. He worked in the morning, he worked in the afternoon. He would come home for a few hours, get some sleep, eat, and then go back to work for a night shift. My mother worked 2 jobs and took care of other people's kids. They worked their butts off to put me and my siblings in the suburbs, in a decent suburb. And they're still working hard. And like you said, a positive male role model is extremely important, and I'm so glad my little brother has one. My father is an amazing role model, and he has tried everything in his power to be there for my little brother. However, I did go to school with people who were not as fortunate. I went to predominantly Black and Hispanic school, but because of the courses I took, I was in class with people who did not look like me. So because of that, I was looked at, they thought I was like everybody else. I was a stereotype. They thought I was not gonna make it. They didn't think I was gonna graduate. I had teachers tell me I wasn't gonna graduate. I graduated top percent of my class. I internalized all of that. And like Professor Odom was talking about, the mental health and how it affects people's education. The only reason I'm here now is because people told me I wasn't going to be here. I can't tell you how many times I thought about dropping out. I'm not gonna lie to you, but I'm still here. I'm still here. And I think it's so important. And I think it's insane that when I was in high school and I was in classes, the teachers would make everyone, my classmates feel better about themselves. There was a hierarchy, education hierarchy within our schools. I was in the IB program. For those of you who don't know, that's the International Baccalaureate Program. And it's basically held to a different standard than AP and honors and such. Most of my classmates, yes, sir, I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm spacing. I also want to speak on that. While I do understand that you guys put your lives on the line, it would be ignorant of me to not acknowledge the fact that you guys are out here risking your lives, you are serving our community. But you guys can go home and take off your uniforms. I cannot take off my skin color. I am seen as a threat. I've actually been misidentified as a robber in my own neighborhood. Neighborhood I was walking home from my friend's house. They stopped me. I was getting home late, way too late. It was around 9 o'clock. It was actually the summer before I came here. They misidentified me as a man who was breaking and entering to a few of the houses. Now I know all of my neighbors. I know every single one of them. I actually live 6 houses down from a police officer. They stopped me. They asked me where I was going, where I was headed, all of that. And I just remember being so scared. I was terrified that was going to be my last. I was so scared. I didn't know if I was going to make it home. I remember as soon as they left, I was crying. I ran home. I just didn't know what to do. And I realize now, even more so with taking the courses that Professor Lafferty and my other professor, Professor Epsenshade, like how heavy ethics is taught. And I realized where those officers made their mistake. The way they addressed me, the way they stopped me, the way they stopped and frisked me. I can still feel their hands on me to this day. And it's not something I like to talk about because it's something that it paints these people in a bad light. And I know that there's so many good people out there. I do know that, but the fact that there are bad apples make the barrel bad, and then they make the orchard bad. And sometimes the only way to really cleanse that is to clear the whole orchard. And I know that that's going to take a long time because, and for systematic racism, like you said, Sergeant Hardy, for me, sorry. Yes, sorry. Systematic racism, sorry. Excuse me, I have epilepsy, so sometimes it kind of spaces out. So systematic racism, it's more than just law enforcement. It's always been more than just law enforcement. It's in education. It's in like the day-to-day life. Like I've dealt with it my entire life. I've dealt with being told that I'm not good enough, that I'll never be good enough. No matter how educated I make myself, no matter how many degrees I'll get in my lifetime, I've been told I'm not good enough. By people who were supposed to encourage me, by teachers, by coaches, by just community leaders. Well, you can't do that. That's not. You need to be reasonable. Set reasonable goals for yourself. Don't shoot too high. You're gonna disappoint yourself. But then they'll go back and tell someone who does not look like me, reach for the stars, go for it. You're more than that. And it's just, I've always wondered why I was never good enough. And like Professor Odom said about the mental stability of young black kids, like I was 8 years old when my parents had my first talk about police officers and how I was supposed to act if I was ever stopped. My brother was 6. And we have continued to have this conversation over and over again since then. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I did not like police officers for the first 15 years of my life. I did not like them. I literally did everything I could to avoid a police officer. Everything I could. But I do, as I got older, I realized that they're just humans. It's a uniform. It's not a whole nother, they're not aliens or something. They're not trying to hurt me. It's not what they came out here to do. And it puts more things in perspective. Because for people who grew up like I did, who do have both their parents in their household, who did have those talks, who did have to be exposed to the good and bad of both. Because I didn't always live in the suburbs. I was not in the best places. I was not in the best of spaces. But I'm glad that I am now. And I'm glad that I can now put myself in more positions to bring up people like I did. And I want to thank you guys so much for coming and for speaking to us, because the whole purpose of this was to give us a holistic view of everything. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm good.
This is another one of those chapel chat experiences that has to be described as holy ground. Whenever we tell our stories honestly, vulnerably, in my tradition, the Holy Spirit works its work, and it worked its work today. Thank you all for being our guest and participating in this conversation. Elena, thank you for telling your story. Professor Odom, thank you for your contribution. And thank you all for being a part of this very special day. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you for having us.
What's your start?